Viewers, welcome to the program Leadership Lecture Series. We have been talking about problems of leadership in Nigeria. I think Nigeria has been described as a country that is very good at missing great opportunities. The reason is because we have problems of selecting good leaders. I want us to look at the problem of leadership in the sense of what has been happening, especially in the last 60 years when we had independence. There is what is called critical juncture. Critical junctures are those turning points when that alter the course of evolution, whether it's of a species or a society or even a country. When critical junctures are arrived at, you have changes that change completely the future or the history of any entity or species or countries. Maybe the best way is to illustrate with examples. Can you imagine Cuba without Castro? When Castro came with his revolutionaries, he overthrew the government of Batista. And since then, Cuba has been very different from what it was before. In fact, incidentally, because of Castro, Las Vegas came into being because the mafia gangsters who were building hotels and holiday resorts in Cuba, they were ejected out of Cuba. So they had to look for a place where they could do their business, and the best place they thought of was Las Vegas, to some extent Atlantic City. Also, can you imagine Russia? When you look at Russia, what happened after Gorbachev came? Soviet Union. Gorbachev came with his perestroika and glasnost, and because of that, he didn't know, he replaced a system, and there was nothing to replace it. He changed the system, but he had nothing better to replace it. Because of that, Soviet Union collapsed. All the countries, about 15 of them, decided to be independent. And incidentally, also, that paved way for West Germany to unite with East Germany. So that's a turning point. It's a real critical juncture for both Russia and for Germany. And when you look at Iran, can you imagine Iran without Khomeini? Because of Khomeini, Iran changed completely from one system to another. The Shah was ejected out of Iran, and he had to be looking for where to stay. Eventually, he ended up going to Mexico. I think he died in Mexico or Egypt. I don't know. I don't remember now. Also, can you imagine Singapore without Lee Kuan Yew? When Lee Kuan Yew came to Singapore, it became a critical juncture. So the coming of Lee Kuan Yew was a critical juncture event, and he changed Singapore. He brought it within two generations, from third world country to first world. And also, if you look at Dubai, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, about 30 years ago, decided to change course for Dubai, and Dubai is completely different. So the coming of Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum is another critical juncture event. Or you think of Vietnam. Can you imagine Vietnam without Ho Chi Minh, or China without Mao Zedong? These are all critical juncture events. So we can also look at Nigeria. Did we have anything like that? I think the coup of 1966 was a critical juncture event because it changed the course of politics. Nigeria became a military dictatorship since 1966. There were some short breaks when we had political, but it was short. Or if you look at the coming of Murtala Mohammed, if he had been allowed to rule, it would have been another critical juncture event. But unfortunately, he didn't last long, only about a few months, not a little over a year. Or if you look at the Idi Amin and Buhari Idi Amin government in 1985, 86, if they had been allowed to continue, it would have been another critical juncture event. But even IBB, who took over from them, in his own pace, because sometimes you have critical juncture events that cause problems. They don't solve any problem, they don't lead to development. In the case of IBB, the worst thing he did for Nigeria was SAP. Because of SAP, we have to pay for medicine, for medical attention, as well as for education. Until then, you would go to the hospital and be treated and you would pay very little money. But he made sure, I think it was part of a program that he adopted for IMF. He made sure that medicine and education are paid for by individuals. But the worst thing he did was the devaluation of the Naira. He devalued the Naira overnight by 80%. So if you had 1 Naira, automatically the following day, the value turned to 25 kobo. And since then, the deterioration of the economy has been going on, and nobody could have stopped it. I think to some extent, Obasanjo introduced a critical juncture event by bringing in the GSM companies, because that has changed a lot of things, banking, even trade. Now we can do trade by internet. So these are examples of critical juncture events. Now we are going into politics. We are going into elections next year. So my advice to us Nigerians is that we should vote for somebody who will bring in a critical juncture event that will change a lot of things in Nigeria. For example, we should find someone who would place priorities on education, on health, on empowerment. All this issue of what do you call it? The infrastructure development. It's a good idea, but we shouldn't do it with government money. I think we should encourage businessmen who will make money out of it, but they will deliver goods. Why I think it's wrong for government to go into infrastructure development is because government is not good at executing contracts. It has been established that whenever government does anything like airports, like roads, the cost is about 3 to 4 times the actual cost. And the annoying thing is that even after they have been built, they cannot be maintained. So they end up either concessioning or privatizing. And when they privatize, we lose money because they don't do it transparently. The history of privatization is full of entities that were privatized, but they're doing worse. And that's the reason is because they will either hand it over to their friends or their relations, and it's like a favor to them. Instead of doing it commercially, transparently, they don't. So it's better for government not to go into infrastructure development. Anywhere there is infrastructure development by government, you'll find that we're spending more money than we should, and by the time we are privatizing it, again, we'll privatize it at a price much lower than the actual cost. So government should only consider law and order, rules of law, pay attention on getting justice for people and things like that. It's not the job of business to go into commercial activities. So, and I think, as I keep saying, we should find a way to stop this idea of money bags telling us whom to vote for, because they will do it for their own selfish reasons. Now, if you like this program, share and comments. If you have any comments, we welcome them. Thank you. Viewers.